Hey, welcome to Rise Church. Thanks so much for joining us online today. We believe that Jesus wants to do so much for you and through you, and we'd love to hear how he's working in your life. Please take a second to email your story to stories@rise-church.com. We hope you leave today feeling encouraged and uplifted. Enjoy the message.
Well, I am excited to be bringing the message to you today. I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh my goodness, is Pastor Adam ever going to step back on this stage? He will next week, I promise you. But I feel like I have a word that God has given me to share with you today. And so I hope that you will lean in today to receive from him. He wants to speak to your heart today. All right, well, let's jump in. So my message today is entitled, End of Your Rope. I don't know how many of you maybe have said this in your life that you feel like, man, I am just at the end of my rope. Maybe you have said this parenting with your children. I surely can't be the only mom in the house that has said, I am just at the end of my rope with you, with your behavior, with your attitude, all of the above. Or maybe for you, you feel like you're at the end of your rope with this whole COVID season. Man, this has been exhausting. If I have to hear about one more person getting sick or one more spike, this is exhausting. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Or maybe for you, it feels a little bit more serious. Maybe throughout this season, you've lost your job and you feel like, man, I am at the end of my rope with my finances. I just don't know what I'm gonna do next. Or maybe it's your marriage. You think, man, I am just at the end of my rope. I don't know what to do next. I've tried it all. Maybe it's infertility and you've been struggling for years and you're like, I have prayed all the prayers, I've gone to all the doctors, and I am at the end of my rope and nothing seems to be working. So I think we all can have these seasons in our lives where we feel like we're at the end of our rope, and we have a few opportunities in these moments. Teddy Roosevelt said, when you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. And that sounds good. It makes sense. But I think that there's a more biblical perspective that we can take in these seasons. Because we've got some options when we're at the end of our rope. We can either hang on, we can strive harder, we can do more, we can give up altogether. Or I think when we're at the end of our rope, we can look at these moments as opportunities from God to come and meet us in these moments and do some work in our lives and speak some things to our hearts that we might not have experienced otherwise. And so this morning, I want us to look at God's word. I want us to look at a few people who I believe were at the end of their rope and they didn't know where to turn next. And I've had moments like this in my life as well, some big, some small, where I felt like, man, if I let go of this rope, I feel like I'm gonna fall to the ground and not be able to get back up. And so you cling on for dear life, just thinking if I hold on tight enough, maybe I'll make it through this season. And so I want us to look at two people today. First, I want us to look at Bartimaeus. And Cream talked a little bit about him last week. He's labeled in the Bible as a blind beggar. More than likely, I would assume that he was blind his whole life, which is what led to the poverty that he was experiencing right now. And he hears that there's a crowd coming, and he hears that Jesus is coming with this crowd, and he thinks, man, if I can just get Jesus to listen to me, maybe I will experience the healing I've been waiting for my whole life. So in Mark 10, it says, when he, Bartimaeus, heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, call him. Bartimaeus did not give up in this moment. he cried out to Jesus more than one time to get his attention. My kids do this really, really well. I don't know if you feel me, moms, but they'll be all the way on the other side of the house, all the way in another room, usually with the door closed, and it's mom, 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 and you run in thinking, surely something has happened, someone's bleeding, someone has fallen, and it's, I need a drink, or I need you to download this game on my iPad for me, and I'm like, come on, you called my name like 10 times. I thought, it was really serious, and it's not so funny in the moment, but I can appreciate their persistence to get my attention so that they can receive whatever it is that they're wanting from me, whether it's important or not. Some of you have called out to Jesus in your life, and he's not answered the prayer that you hoped he would answer. And you've gotten frustrated. You've lost a little bit of hope. You've wondered, Jesus, do you even hear me? Did you hear the big, bold prayer that I asked of you to do this miracle, to bring this healing? But can you imagine if Bartimaeus would have only called out the one time to Jesus, or only 2 times? We don't know how many times. It just says he cried out all the more. So we don't know how many times it was, but what if he had only cried out one time? He would have missed out on this opportunity to have an encounter with Jesus. I've prayed for a long time in my life, for 7 years, for God to move some mountains and do a miracle in a situation in my life. And I have prayed and prayed, fasted, prayed some more, lost hope, prayed differently, given up again, prayed some more. Anybody else feel me? And you just pray and pray and pray, and nothing seems to happen. And I have been there for years and years and years. But I think often, I don't know which prayer is going to be the one that Jesus is going to turn his face and say, what do you want me to do for you? How can I move in this situation? So Bartimaeus cried out, and he didn't know which cry was going to get Jesus' attention. And listen, the reality is Jesus hears every single prayer we're praying, but for some reason, we might not always receive the miracle that we're wanting right in that moment. But one of those prayers could be the one that just shifts it all, that moves the mountain. So we keep praying, even though it feels exhausting, even though we feel like we're at the end of our rope, and we've prayed it over and over again. And some of you today, I think, need to cry out to Jesus just like Bartimaeus did, over and over and over again, day after day, season after season, never giving up, never asking him to move. Because when we're at the end of our rope, we can either stop praying or we can keep shouting out to God. The second person I want us to look at comes from the Gospels in Mark chapter 5, and it's one of my favorite stories in the Word of God. And this woman doesn't have a name. She's just called the woman with the issue of blood. She had this physical ailment that she could not be cured of, that she had tried everything and nothing was bringing her healing. She'd gone to all the doctors, spent everything that she had in order to try to be cured from this. And in Mark 5, it says, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. I think it's pretty clear that this woman was at the end of her rope. She had tried it all. She had prayed all the prayers. She had done everything that was possible for her to get healing, and it had not happened. And so she thought in her mind, man, if I can just get to Jesus, I know that I will get the healing I've been praying for. And what you have to know about this woman is in these biblical days, if you had an issue like this, you were considered unclean. You weren't allowed to be out in front of people. You had to be alone. If you went out in crowds, you had to let people know, this is my ailment, this is my issue, I am unclean, don't come near to me. And so the Bible shows us, though, that this woman fought through the crowd that was surrounding Jesus just to get to him. I imagine people were pushing her back and saying, hey, I know you. I know the issue that you have. You're not supposed to be here, much less come up next to Jesus. How many of you have ever been Black Friday shopping pre-COVID, when it was like legit Black Friday shopping, like fighting the crowd? Now, my first experience with Black Friday shopping was wild, and we had our little son, Noah, and I can't remember how old he was, just a few years old, and he wanted this Thomas the Train set, like train table, and it was really expensive, and we really couldn't afford it, but it was on sale, and so Mama Bear was gonna get to Black Friday and get this train set. And so I remember going to Toys R Us, and the line was just wrapped around the building, and so I got in the line, and I never have done this before, so I don't know what it's gonna be like, but I'm just assuming they're gonna open the door, and I'm gonna get my car, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna put the train set in and check out, and it's all just gonna be great. And I think when I pulled in and I saw all the people that had beat me there, I was like, this is gonna be a long night, and I don't know that I'm gonna come out with anything. And so I waited in line, and I wasn't too far back in the line, but they opened the doors, and they started letting people in, and quickly I realized, this is intense. There are no more carts at this point that I've made it up to the line, so I'm trying to figure out how in the world am I gonna lug this like train table set to the door, but I'm like, we can do this. And it was like a race when they opened the door. It was game on. People are running. They don't care what you want. All they care about is what they want, and they're grabbing 3 of this and 3 of that, and they're throwing it in the cart, and I'm just like trying to weave in and out of all of the people to get to this train set. But it was a fight through the crowd to get to that item that you really wanted and you really needed. Now, Christmas was saved, and I got that train set and loaded it up in my arm, was able to check out of that store. Felt like I had just accomplished it all, and I think it's because I'm short, and so I was able to just get in and out of people. They didn't see me coming. But how many of you are grateful that as a follower of Jesus, we don't have to fight through the crowds to get to Jesus? See, this woman, she had to fight to physically get to Jesus, because in the biblical days, you wanted to experience a touch from him, you had to go find him. You had to seek him out and run to him. And so she had to fight her way, throw some elbows just to get down and touch the hem of his garment. But for us, in the days that we live in now, when Jesus left this earth and went to be with the Father, he has left us with the very Spirit of God here on this earth. It lives inside of us. It is all around us. It is everywhere we go. We can't outrun it. And so when we need a touch from Jesus, we can get to him. We have access to him. He's available to us. All we have to do is run to him, and surrender, run to him as a child saying, I need a touch from you. But what this woman represents for us, she had a heart of desperation to get to Jesus. I think often in our lives, we want to experience God. We want him to move in our lives. We want him to move the mountains and answer the prayers and provide in ways, but I think often we're not desperately seeking him with everything that we have. Maybe you don't need a huge miracle in your life, but you just want to experience more of him. All we have to do is ask. All we have to do is seek him, is run to him in desperation and say, Jesus, I just want more of you. I want to experience more of your love. I want to experience your presence on a daily basis. Can you imagine how differently our lives would look if we woke up in the morning and the first thing we did was, Jesus, I'm here, and I just want to hear from you today. Jesus, I just want a word from you today. I just want to experience your presence in my home today. Can you imagine how different our church and our world would be if we all had a heart of desperation to experience and seek Jesus in every situation in our lives? Sometimes I think, I don't know why God allows difficult moments in our lives and why we pray and we don't always see the answers that we want or the miracles that we're asking for whatever reason. Sometimes the healing comes, sometimes it doesn't. And I think sometimes, though, that God allows us to get to these moments of desperation so that we know that all we need is Jesus. All we need is to experience his presence in our lives. All we need is hope from him or a word from him that will shift and change things in our hearts, because I think that when we're at the end of our rope, we can either give up or we can run to Jesus. Maybe you feel like this woman and you know that the only thing that's going to bring you some relief or some hope is a touch from Jesus. He's waiting for you. He's available to you. You have access to him. He's not far away. He's not hiding from you. He's just waiting for you to desperately run to his feet. A few years ago, I had a moment in my life that I felt like I was at the end of my rope. Like I had prayed in every way that I knew possible, and it just felt like nothing good was coming from it, and I wasn't seeing any answers, and it was just getting increasingly harder to trust God. And I remember in this week, it just felt like everything that I had to do that week felt like pressure. Like pressure to show up, pressure to be a mom, pressure to lead on Sunday. And I felt like I could barely get out of bed without crying, much less show up and do whatever I needed to accomplish that day. And I remember waking up that morning and already feeling in my heart like, God, if you don't show up and do something soon, like I gotta tap out. Like I need some relief, I need some help, I need something. I need a word from you, I need anything at all. And I remember getting up early, and I've shared this story before with you, that I got up and I went into my bathroom and everybody was still asleep in my house. It was dark outside, and I remember just kneeling down in my bathroom, and I was the kind of person that would hold the tears in for as long as I could until I felt like, all right, my eyes are just stinging so badly, but I knew that if I started crying, like it was all over with, and I wasn't gonna be able to suck anything back up. And so I remember just going into the bathroom and just crying and crying for what seemed like hours. I don't think it was that long at all, but I remember just crying and crying and crying, and then just starting to pray and talk to God. And then at some point, I remember my prayers started shifting, and I wasn't just praying like I had before, but there was a desperation in my heart. Like, God, I need you to move. At this point, I'm not even asking for you to answer the miracle prayer. I'm asking for you to just come and do something in my heart, because I feel done in this moment. I feel like I don't have the strength to get up and do anything else. And I remember just sitting and listening, trying to just hear from him, because I had done a lot of talking, a lot of praying. And in this moment, just sitting and listening to God. And I knew in that moment something had shifted, something had changed, and I felt like the presence of the Lord was literally in my tiny little bathroom. And I thought, if I move, I felt like I'm gonna bump into him right now. And I remember he just came in that moment, and I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt known. I felt like God was like, Rebecca, I see you, I hear you. I've listened to every single prayer that you have prayed, and I'm sorry that you're suffering. I'm sorry that you're hurting, but I am with you. You're not in this alone. You don't even have to have the strength to continue to move forward, because I'm gonna keep doing it through you. And so when I got up out of the bathroom that day and I walked out of my bathroom, my situation hadn't changed. The mountain hadn't been moved. The miracle hadn't been answered, still hasn't been answered. That was 5 years ago. It's now been 7 years. But what happened in that moment, the miracle that took place in my bathroom that day, was that I had an encounter with Jesus. I had a hands and face on the floor, reach out and try to desperately touch Jesus moment. And he came in that moment and he met me right there and he began to speak hope and peace in my life. And so when I walked out of the bathroom, the situation still stunk, but I had hope restored and joy filled my life once again. And I remember, I feel like I can smile today. I feel like I can find joy in my day. I feel like I can see the goodness of God in my life once again. And so sometimes the miracles, they don't happen when we ask them to, but we can't forget about the miracle of having an encounter with Jesus. I think so many times in our lives, when he doesn't move and the miracle doesn't happen, we just think God's forgotten about us. We think that he's never going to answer my prayer, and it's not the reality. He hears you, every prayer that you pray. And when we find ourselves in these seasons, I know it sounds cliche, it sounds super churchy, but when we find ourselves in these seasons of being at the end of our rope, all we need is a touch from Jesus. All we need is the presence of Jesus to come and bring peace over our lives. Because when we get to the end of our rope and we feel like we're at the end of our suffering, the end of our struggles, the end of my plans and the way that I thought things were gonna go, coming to church is not enough. Singing the songs is not enough. Hearing a good sermon, it's not enough. I don't have a bunch of points today or a 3-step process on this is what you need to do when you're at the end of your rope and everything will turn out fine, because what we have to do when we're at the end of our rope is to just let go and trust God. Trust in the faithfulness of Jesus to carry you through every single season of your life. It's freeing yourself from trying to hang on so tightly and just trusting God in the free fall. The miracle might not be what you wanted. The infertility might not be healed. The financial provision might not come through like you thought. The job might not happen immediately. But God's gonna be faithful to you in that season. And don't get me wrong, Rise Church, like we serve a mighty God. We serve a God that in a moment can step in, and we have seen him do it. That he comes in and the cancer's healed in Jesus' name. The job is provided, and this happens all the time. And we pray big prayers here at Rise Church. And so I'm not negating what you're walking through and saying, just quit praying and trust Jesus. No, we keep praying every single day. But if it doesn't happen the way we thought it would, sometimes you just need to have a face on the floor moment with Jesus where you say, okay, God, I'm not seeing this happen right now, but what I need right now is a touch from you. What I need right now is supernatural strength to keep walking forward, no matter what the next season's gonna take. And I think that if we can walk and close out 2020 reminded of this truth that, come on, 2021's not looking much brighter for us, okay? We're not just gonna step into 2021 and it all just be over with. We're still gonna be walking in this tough season. The things that you dealt with in 2020 might be walking with you into 2021, but if our perspective can shift to the fact that we have a very living God who wants to walk with us through every season of our lives, I think that we'll walk into 2021 with our heads held a little bit high, trusting in the faithfulness of God. Another moment in my life where I felt like I was at the end of my rope was a season that I had walked away from God. I was young, 18 years old, and had a lot of church hurt. I don't know if you've ever experienced church hurt, but it's real. And it makes it really difficult to want to walk in a relationship with God, much less step foot in a church. And so I had walked away from God for a season and just had experienced a lot of hurt, a lot of brokenness. I struggled to know if God really loved me, because when I started to struggle with some sin in my life, the church was the first one to tell me how disappointed they were in my choices. And so I felt like that's what God thought about me. He's frustrated at me, he's disappointed at me. And so I ran headstrong into the other direction. I'm a very determined girl, and so when I set my mind to do something, like, I'm gonna go all out and do it to the best I can. And so I left church and went right down the other path and said, well, I'm gonna figure things out on my own. And I tried everything that I could think possible that would bring me some hope, that would bring me some joy, that would make me feel loved and fulfilled. And it ended up leaving me to a really broken place. And so 3 years down this long path, my husband shares the story with you about how he asked me when I asked him on a date, are you happy? And I was at the end of my rope in that season. I was broken. I was broke. Had wasted everything. I was so lonely. And I went home that night and I was all alone, and I remember just kneeling down in my living room and saying, God, you tell me, people have told me that you love me. I've read it, I've grown up in church, but I don't feel it right now. But if you love me, I need you to show up right now. I need you to show me. I need you to tell me. I need to experience something. And so I remember kneeling down on my floor and grabbing my Bible for the first time in 3 years and just doing I'm just gonna flop it open and pray for the best. I don't necessarily encourage that, but I think in this moment, God knew I was a mess. And so he's like, I'm gonna help you out here, kid. And so I opened my Bible and pretty much right down the middle landed on Psalms chapter 40. And as I read through Psalms 40, which is David just crying out to God, I read through this and I felt like God said, Rebecca, this is what I want to do for you. What I did for David is what I want to do for you right now. He said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he turned to me and heard my cry. Rise Church, do you know that God turns his ear to hear your cries? Every cry of desperation, every cry of grief, every cry of frustration, he is turning his ear to hear you. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. Some of you are in a pit today and you don't know how to get yourself out. You might have put yourself in there because of your choices. Somebody else might have put you in there. It is life that puts you there. But he said he pulled me out. He set my feet on the rock and gave me a firm place to stand. When he pulls you out of this pit that you're in, the pit of despair, the pit of whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it all goes away. It doesn't necessarily mean that the miracle has happened. It means that God's going to place you on a firm foundation. That rock represents Jesus Christ. And when he places you on that firm foundation, come on, nothing can shake you. Nothing can move you, because your foundation is not in your own dreams, your own plans, your own whatever. Your foundation is now in Jesus. And so David is showing us here, he says, he put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. And so David is showing us here, man, this is the response. When God comes in and he takes you from this pit of whatever it is in your life, you can put yourself in whatever the season, whatever the situation is, that he will rescue you from that pit. It might not mean that the situation goes away. It might not mean that everything is perfect. Listen, my life is not perfect. Everything in my life has not worked out according to my plans, but what God has done is he has pulled me out of that. He has set my feet on a firm foundation that is now Jesus, and now no matter what comes my way, no matter if I have to walk the rest of my life not seeing him answer the prayers that I have asked, he will be faithful. And you need to hit your knees sometimes in your life and say, God, I need an encounter with you. I need a word from you. I need you to speak to me. I need you to fill me with your presence. And that is what he did in my life. And Rise Church, I am telling you, that is what he will do for you. He will not leave you hanging. When you get to the end of your rope, he will meet you there in that moment. And you can let go and you can trust in God. So come on, Rise Church, let's stand up on our feet. We're gonna worship him.
Thanks for watching today. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram. If our church has had an impact on you and you'd like to support all that Jesus is doing in this place, you can do so by going to rise-church.com/give and select the giving option that best suits you. Thanks so much for joining us online, and we hope you have a blessed week.